Friday, Friday. I need a good echo.
Is it Friday?
It's monster truck season, and I'm ready to go. It's always monster truck season somewhere.
The only
You know what a monster truck is?
I know the big trucks jumping around like kids in a playground. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
The only problem with being Friday is that Friday is just beginning.
It is, which is
But
a little odd for us.
At least where we live.
It's. I unfortunately had prior commitments this afternoon, so I was unable to do the normal time. So if you're here with us live today, thanks for showing up a little bit earlier than normal, about 4 hours earlier. If you don't know who we are, my name is Darren Pope. This over here is Victor Farsick, and we are the co-host of a podcast called DevOps Paradox. And on Fridays, we do this little show called DevOps Paradox Live, which has nothing really to do with the podcast, other than it's the same name.
Other than showing that we are not creative people, cannot come up with two names.
That's what it boils down to. And Marco calls it out, and it's still working hours, yes.
Exactly. That's the problem with right now being Friday. I would like it to be Friday night.
And it'd just be done, right.
Exactly.
But that's not today. Marco, thanks for showing up. This week's, speaking of the podcast, you know what? Do you have your drink? What are you starting with? Because it's still early.
Coke.
You're still on Coke.
Yeah.
And I don't even have
I need 3 hours more until I start with my stuff.
Yeah, so it's like I just have my water bottle because I haven't even been down to the fridge yet to get something out of the fridge. So to everybody, cheers. I have a nice 9.5 alkaline water vintage. So which is pretty much all I drink anyway. Okay, so this week's episode was with Grady, which was sort of out of context for us. We normally don't talk to front-end people because we don't think like them. We just don't. Because they have to deal with browsers. I mean, you did browser work years ago. I did browser work years ago. And we got out of it for a reason. It's miserable.
Yeah, but it also changed. I'm not following it that much, but I cannot imagine that it's same level of trouble that we had with Internet Explorer, Netscape, and things changing in each of those drastically from one release to another. We don't have those problems anymore, or at least I hope that we don't. I'm not a front-end developer anymore, so I don't know, but I hope. Even if you say I build everything for Chrome only, which would be a terrible idea, still you would be covering what, like 90%, 80% of the market?
Yeah, because a lot of the browsers are based on Chromium, so it's
and Edge is now Chromium as well, right? So basically Explorer is out of the picture. What is there now? Firefox basically, and Opera, which probably together are not more than 20%.
Yeah. I was trying to remember. There was something I saw earlier this week. Oh, Flash is like completely dead. But there were still people that didn't know Flash was dying. They didn't know there was a time bomb in Flash.
No, but the Flash is dead years ago. Just said, this is another memo, just in case if previous 57 memos were not read. This is the last one. This is the last time we are sending you a fax message. That is dead.
As I go find my fax machine, which is probably still somewhere in my garage, I can't remember where if it pops up. But it was like either a train system or a taxing organization. They realized that hey, all this is messed up and it's not working, and they realized it's the time bomb. So let's just reset the clocks on all of our computers back a few weeks. And they actually put in a request to Adobe to undo the death of Flash. Something like that. Again, all of that's hearsay. I heard it from somebody else. But
I haven't checked lately, but let's say maybe half a year ago, last time I checked, HBO was running on Flash.
Well, yeah, I'm sure they've
changed. And it's not some small, obscure something. Flash, bloody Flash.
Yep. But Flash is dead now, thankfully. So let's get into the little bit of news that we found this week, which there wasn't much. So if people have questions or comments, now's the time to get them in the chat, please, so we can talk about them in a little bit. Let me grab the... So we're sort of sticking on the... Elastic has raised its head again. Let's just put it this way. So now not only have we had a fork from AWS, it looks like we've got another fork coming from logs.
It's not clear to me whether it's another fork or logs will cooperate with others on some fork.
Well, that's what I'm saying, though. So it's whether logs is the one doing the fork or not, it smells like there's going to be at least two forks. Right? The AWS fork under Open Distro, and then whatever logs in their consortium. I was trying to find, there was a section in this post that talked about that, and I can't remember where it was.
To be honest, this news made me a bit more optimistic about the current situation, much more than AWS post.
Yeah, and I don't have a problem with AWS doing what they're doing. I mean, it's just, they can do what they want.
Of course. I mean, it's their right to do what they want. It just kind of, to me, sounds silly that AWS now is jumping in and saying, we are saving open source. Okay, come on.
No.
That's not really what you're doing. That would be not so different than if Microsoft, and I'm now talking 15 years ago, would say we are saving open source. All the record shows that you're not.
15 years ago.
Yeah, 15 years ago. No. Now Microsoft is amazing. Open source perspective, it's absolutely. I think they're doing a great job. But it's. I like that there is a sentence that really portrays very well what I thought. Mm-hmm. I'm paraphrasing now. That says, "Hey, now Elastic is creating that image. Poor us. We're a small, tiny player." Being stomped by a huge giant, which is AWS.
Yeah.
Which is true, relatively speaking. But it's not true kind of that they're $10 million company. They are a multi-billion-dollar company. It's just that they are being attacked by a order of magnitude bigger company, which is AWS, but they are a multi-million-dollar company and really cannot. I think it's almost silly portraying themselves as David against Goliath, kind of like, oh, we are a tiny company being crushed. No, absolutely not.
No, not at least in our opinion.
And it's true. And kind of sorry for interrupting, but what is happening with logs, I think that's the real damage that is being done. Is that it's not about Elastic and AWS. It's about a huge number of companies putting their strategies and their future in open source, Elastic search and what's not, right? And this situation might be horrifying because those are the really, truly small players, right? That are being now in between those two and not knowing what to do, and then whether they made a terrible mistake forever actually relying on Elastic. It's a really, really bad situation for open source. And this kind of goes on public, right, on record. We can check a year from now, right? And I guarantee you that both AWS and Elastic will be losers in this game. Nobody will win from this.
The thing that's interesting to me is, this is what always gets called out as this Section 13. And again, this would apply to 7.11 and higher, because anything 7.10 and below is under Apache. So there's no question about that. So if you never need to upgrade your application again, and 7.10 is good enough, you're gold, right? Again, I am not a lawyer. I don't play one on TV.
Yeah,
But
you
in
know,
theory,
cannot.
it should be fine. But
Yeah,
here's
but then
this is the
there
but
will be a security breach. Something will happen that you
yes,
will need to update.
right. But then it's this section 13, which funny that it's 13, if you believe in weird number things. Enabling third parties to interact with the functionality. Well, this is where I've seen some people, it's like, okay, that's a little broad because that means if I don't have a product like AWS providing it as a service, so Elasticsearch as a service, that's not what I'm doing, but the product I use has a dependency on Elasticsearch for reporting. Does this affect me? And broadly, as they say here, yeah, it could. Depends on the lawyer you talk to, your region, whatever else.
That is the main problem with this change, is that it's open to interpretation. And when it's open to interpretation, then the situation is not very good.
Yeah, it's beyond not very good. It's just bad. Not having clarity
Yes.
is a bad thing. So I have a feeling this won't be the last time we talk about this. I just hope it's the last time we talk about it for a couple of weeks.
Yep.
Here was one thing that I saw this week too. This went GA, and even though it's still showing experimental or preview, or did it go GA? I can't remember. I guess not, since it still says preview. Hang on a second. Let me refresh this because I just pulled it up. Yeah, it's still preview. But expiring secrets. Now, not that this is a big deal and this is GCP only. But this is a bigger conversation because having an expiring secret can eliminate a lot of problems that you have with just having secrets in general. Right? We've talked about this to where if you've got a credential that automatically has its password, its key, its whatever its secret side is, automatically rotate to where actually no human ever knows what the value is. How cool is that? I think you're muted if you're talking, or are you just bored?
I'm not. I wasn't talking.
Oh, okay.
But,
I can't see your face. I mean, okay, so to me, this is the more interesting thing is you can do this in AWS with Secrets Manager, but you have to actually write a Lambda to take care of the rotation for you. This is just baked into GCP. This will be interesting to see how the other, and I haven't dug into Vault or the other players to see how if they even handle expiring secrets or not. But this is one of the things that I liked about, I think even GitHub has this now, right? You can, was it GitHub or GitLab? I think it's actually GitLab that allows you to do expiring credentials. That's interesting because it's like, hey, I need to give somebody access to this, but I don't want to have to remember to go and revoke it. You just set the date that you want it to automatically revoke. Okay.
yeah, I think that Vault does that.
It does? Okay. All right. So anyway, now it's available in GCP. Moving on.
Nice.
I saw this on Cloudflare. Now, this is a little bit older. This is back from November. But this whole post goes into an automated origin CA. And to be able to have this within Kubernetes automatically, so it's just an extension to Cert Manager, which is cool if you're using Cloudflare. But if you're not, this doesn't make any difference to you either. No comment.
So it's kind of, I didn't go through it, right? It's
Yeah.
kind of making Cert Manager, Let's Encrypt work with Cloudflare in a way, right?
Yeah.
Nice. Any increase in adoption of Let's Encrypt is a bonus in my book.
Yeah. And it goes through and does ingress support and other just things. So whatever it is, I use Cloudflare a little bit, but not enough to, and I definitely don't have it in front of Kubernetes. So, okay. Again, a super light news week. This is the one I wanted to get into. Your first video for the week. Because I actually had reason to use this in real life this week. In fact, this came out on Tuesday. I actually used this on Wednesday.
Like Helm or Kustomize or by this?
Well, no, I was talking to somebody because he was trying to figure out, okay, how do we do this? I went, well, have you looked at Victor's video yet? Because he just talked about this. And it really boils down to, and you still need to watch the video if you haven't watched the video yet. But correct me if I'm wrong, but it boils down to, if you're a developer, you're probably going to stick in Helm. If you're the operations side, you're probably going to use Kustomize.
Correct. If you're a developer who is supposed to change some aspects of the application. Now, there are developers who simply do not change any aspect of the application. Just kind of somebody else does that for them, which I don't think it's a good idea. But if you're in a group that, hey, I am the one defining what is running in staging, production, what's not, but I do not have enough knowledge to kind of go into the details of Kubernetes manifests and what's not, then Helm is a definite winner, because you're dealing with values, equivalent of properties, right? Imagine before Kubernetes containers, you're given properties that you can change. And that's absolutely amazing. But the problem with Helm is, so actually there is a background story that is not in a video behind Helm versus Kustomize. I used both in the past with mixed feelings depending on the day of the week or month or what's or not. But right now I have a real problem. I want to distribute software to people, but in a way that they are in full control of what they want to change, what they want to modify, and what's not. And I can go down two routes, and this is from a software vendor perspective. I can go down two routes. I can create a Helm chart that contains absolutely every single variation and permutation that anybody will ever need, which I physically cannot do. Or I can say, hey, this is the base setup. Do with it whatever you want. You want to add this tier? Great. You want to change it to Linkerd? Great. I will never be able to create all those permutations in a Helm chart. And this, to me, reflects the current problem with third-party Helm charts. I was very often in a situation where I love using Helm charts, third-party Helm charts especially. Kind of, hey, I change ingress host and suddenly that's all I need, right? It's absolutely brilliant. Until I get to the point that Helm chart doesn't do something I need it to do. And then I need to basically fork the repo, modify the Helm chart and start using my Helm chart instead of their Helm chart. And then I end up in a trouble with merging the changes, because their Helm chart is also moving forward, right? I want to have those improvements and what's not, and then it becomes nightmare. The moment a Helm chart contains something, is missing something or has something that is not to my liking, it falls apart.
Yep. By the way, you're doing your clicky thing.
Oh, clicky, yes.
So anyway, I was talking with somebody, and I just told them, hey, go watch the video and understand it. I think what you just called out there is important. If you're creating a Helm chart for your stuff and your stuff only, it probably doesn't matter. The problem is when you're creating a Helm chart for others to consume.
Yes.
Right. That's others, meaning outside of your organization and outside of your infrastructure and outside of all that other things.
I would say that I definitely agree with the second statement. I would only partly agree with the first. When you're creating internal Helm chart or deployment manifests or what's not, it does kind of matter. It really boils down to preferences, whether you like patching or templating. I think, to me, templates, curly braces in YAML never felt good. I dislike them in let's change the subject. I dislike them in Terraform as well. I think that the need to use templating, curly braces in YAML, HCL, what's not, is a smell that you cannot really do it declaratively. Maybe the whole concept is falling apart. Simply, I really, really dislike, this is personal preference, I dislike templating of declarative definitions.
It's what it is. So let me clarify again what I wanted to say is, if you're writing a Helm chart to manage your own thing and you have full control and you're the only one ever using it, okay, whatever. But as soon as it needs to be used by somebody else, the combination of Helm and Kustomize is actually pretty good, right? That's where the power is. It's like, okay, here's my gold copy of my Helm chart. If it doesn't work for you, then here's probably how you should modify and move forward and how to operate using that base Helm chart. Don't fork it. Just here's how to deal with it.
Yeah.
Does that seem reasonable? Okay.
Yeah, create a PR, right? Kind of, you're missing, create a PR. But because it's internal, it will be accepted. There is a real use case for that. You could counter argue, hey, if it's third party, let's say that we're talking about open source, you can create a PR over there. But then that's a bit tricky because open source is not meant to be bloated with every single individual's person's use case.
Right.
Then it becomes a mess.
Yeah. So that's actually a good question. How far should a Helm chart go as far as supporting infrastructure? Should it be for vanilla Kubernetes and the big three? And maybe throw in Docs and Linode as well in case whatever? Just because.
In general, I don't think that I haven't seen much of vendor-specific stuff because normally kind of, your charts would use the form volume, maybe allow you to specify storage class. Load balancers are created out of the box. I don't think that there is much vendor-related stuff or even the need for vendor-specific stuff in charts.
Okay.
Which is a good thing.
It is. Excuse me. Hang on. I was just thinking through with AWS recently adding in ALB as an option to where you don't have to use Nginx ingress if you haven't gone down service mesh yet.
Oh yeah.
So being able to easily swap that, swap that ingress out. Those kinds of things is what I was thinking about. Not the full thing, but just a little bit.
That's already where Helm becomes very problematic.
Right.
Realistically, you can say, hey, I'm going to include ingress in my Helm chart. I'm going to, through labels, say that the default one is Nginx, and I'm going to allow you to specify through values something that will change those labels to be something potentially different, and I will cross my fingers that the rest of the ingress specification stays the same, which it doesn't. That's very tense, right? If I would be maintainer of third-party open source, what's not Helm chart, if I go down that route, including, let's say, Istio, then I have to include Linkerd, and it becomes a nightmare. Just too much.
Okay. Let's move on from there to the video from yesterday about Argo events. Why isn't everything just async to begin with? I know why, but why do you think it isn't?
We talked about it in the future episode of the podcast. It's almost a mystery that most of the things we do is asynchronous, except when we start designing our systems, and then for some reason or another, we kind of cannot cope with that. what was the example? It was like when you write a Slack message, when you
Yeah.
send an email, asynchronous, 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 asynchronous. Let me design a system. Oh, no, it needs to be synchronous. It's silly. But the Argo events goes a bit beyond that. It's both about being asynchronous, but also about being decoupled. It's about, you can do asynchronous communication by still enforcing, hey, this is point A goes to point B in a synchronous way, right? First it's synchronous and then asynchronous, and then you got the next step is, hey, this is point A, publishing events, and then I don't know who is listening to those events. I don't know who is doing something with those events, and vice versa. Which is, I think, the ultimate goal, assuming that we want microservices-based architecture, because I think that once we start going down the route of microservices and bigger systems and what's not, trying to track and know for each source what is the destination is very complex in complex systems. Now, to backtrack a bit, if you have a small system, knowing that A goes to B and B goes to C makes a lot of sense. It's much easier than making it decoupled. But once you go beyond certain size, coupling is just a nightmare. Always was.
And will always be.
Yeah.
And this is why something like using an event subsystem and then using Kafka or whatever other types of transports you need matters. Because if I can so async is one thing, you called it out, but decoupling is more important. To be able to decouple the systems, I can, in theory, infinitely scale whatever that I'm doing. It doesn't mean that every section is going to be infinitely scalable, but I can infinitely scale because I don't have the hard dependencies anymore, other than I'm publishing something, so is anybody listening for it? We don't care. We don't know and we don't care.
And actually, now when I think about it, that makes a lot of sense, because if the decoupling is the end goal in this context, then we can say that being asynchronous is almost mandatory step towards that goal.
Yeah.
Because I cannot imagine how that can be decoupled while being
synchronous. It can't. Or at least I don't think it can. Well, it's like kubectl. That's all that's doing is dropping a message, right?
Exactly. I mean, the example that we had like 5 minutes ago about Helm charts and whether it's Ingress, Nginx, or something else, that's the whole story. I'm sending to the API information that I want Ingress. I do not know whether it's Nginx or some other Ingress controller listening to the event and creating something that will ultimately end up allowing requests from outside of the cluster to reach my application. I know very often, and it almost sounds strange when I say I don't know who will. I do know if I'm the person who set up the cluster, but I do know from the perspective that, hey, I just installed an Nginx controller. But from the perspective of the person, which could be the same or different, that creates that request, I want Ingress, the information who is going to create that Ingress is almost irrelevant. Now, we are not there yet. And that's the deficiency, I think, now of Ingress definition in general. But that's definitely where we are going.
Okay. Enough about this. If you haven't seen, just in case you're watching this, it's like, man, he's talked about Argo X and Argo Y. I have a feeling he's probably going to be talking about Argo Z.
He will.
So, just in case you're not seeing this thread come alive, just be on the watch. And you still have 2 planned for next week?
Yes. Okay. One will be one which is almost certain will be about Argo workflows. I want to kind of start closing the loop. There will be more about, and afterwards, after the next week, maybe putting it all together. And another video, I'm not yet sure. I think I'm in my brain. I'm thinking about the idea to make a race to kind of like which cloud provider is fastest in doing something. So some kind of competition. It's still thinking phase, not yet sure. I cannot guarantee it will be done.
Fastest. Interesting.
Fastest to create a cluster, fastest to upgrade the cluster, fastest to give you storage, stuff like that. Imagine like race with obstacles and how do you call that in English? Checkpoints, right? It's not a single race. With checkpoints.
So it'd be like a Ironman triathlon. So it's like you're going through each of the sections.
Something like that. I'm not sure whether that makes sense, but sometimes I get bored and then think of silly stuff to do.
Not you. You don't get bored. I actually saw something. I'm not going to pull it up. In fact, I'm not even going to talk about it because I need to spend some more time looking at it. So I don't even know why I said it. What else? What else is there? Next week's podcast episode is edited, but that's it. I haven't given it a title yet. I don't even remember what it is. So, because I finished it on.
I forgot.
I don't remember. It's like it's not on my list. It's not. I mean, it's on my list of things to do. It's just I don't remember which one it was. Here, I'll pull it up real quick. Hang on a second. Because now it's like, okay, what is it that we were doing? So this one is about. We can talk about this for a few minutes without giving away the whole episode. How do you create a working environment to where people who would normally leave and go somewhere else instead decide to stay? That's, I mean, obviously that's partly on the employer, but it's also on the employee.
Exactly. And it's a tricky one because the more you want somebody, the more likely that somebody is to leave.
Yeah.
And the less you want somebody, the less likely it is for that person to leave. It's almost like a paradox, right? It's almost you want to retain people who want to leave and you want to fire people who want to stay. Almost type of logic, right?
Yeah. So that's what that episode is about. Don't say much more because you're already starting to repeat what we already said in it.
Am I? Okay. Yeah, probably.
I'm surprised. I can't remember. We were
Any
that
questions?
Like 2 weeks ago. No, let's see here. Let me see. We have a greeting from Thomas. No questions. What questions do you have? It was a light, and while Victor was ranting a little bit, I was trying to go off and find some stuff. I saw somebody talk earlier this week internally about AWS announcing federated clusters, but it's really not that. It was just a solution using kubefed. That might be an interesting thing to do. Just play with kubefed.
I think that everybody is going in that direction, but nothing substantial is going on. Even the kind of the whole Entos story is somehow in the air.
Yeah.
I believe that companies are maybe hitting issues that and realizing they were more optimistic about solving those problems than they should be.
Well, I think a lot of it probably gets back to storing state, right?
Yes.
That's
storing state and latency.
Right, and they don't have a good way of dealing with that level of. They don't know how to deal with replicated state.
Yeah.
At a global scale, because typically if you're doing that, then it's a real problem with that. There was actually one more thing. I saw this yesterday. Docker came out with something else. Here we go. There we go. So they open sourced the Hub CLI tool. And last week we talked about, was it Reg Client? but this is just the specific for Hub tool, which they made available recently, but then it got open sourced.
Nice.
This was the only thing the only other big thing that I saw this week. Not that it was big, but
I haven't used it, so I don't. Now I'm curious to see what it really does.
yeah, it's. Let's see. Let's look at the release notes again. Yeah, I don't even remember. Let's look at the README because it's just a CLI for interacting with Docker Hub.
I'm always a bit skeptical when companies open source something that was not supposed to be open source. Now, when you start an open source project and then it keeps being open source and maybe you do some commercial things on top of it, to me, that's perfectly fine. But when you say, hey, after this being commercial for X years, I'm open sourcing it by default. And this might not be true. I cannot apply this to everybody, but my brain translates that we're giving up on this thing. So what do you do when you give up on something, you open source it? I'm not saying that that's what's happening right now with Hub CLI. I honestly don't know. But that's my first thing that pops to my mind. Hey, you're open sourcing it after years of not being open source. There's something wrong.
Yeah, well, so reading this warning, it's an experiment to build a Hub CLI tool. The intention is to get user feedback and then add this into the Docker CLI. So this smells a little bit like what happened with Compose.
Yeah.
Right? Because now Compose used to be standalone and had been standalone forever. And now it's baked in. So maybe this is just the way to keep it in isolation. That way you don't break the big ugly binary.
Maybe. I don't know. Need to see what it is. I'm guessing now. But Compose also had some weird history of being inside of Docker and not being inside of Docker and then being inside of Docker. It reminds me of Kustomize, going back to the previous subject. One of the big problems with Kustomize, and one of the things that was off-putting me in the past with Kustomize was that, hey, Kustomize is part of kubectl. It's not part of kubectl. It's older version in kubectl. It's newer version of kubectl. Those uncertainties are off-putting to me.
Yeah.
Like right now, customizing kubectl is version 2 something. Kustomize is version 3 something. And I would really like to rely on kubectl, but I'm not going to touch that thing for Kustomize because I don't know what's going on.
Right.
I don't want to write a bunch of scripts that will do kubectl-k and then tomorrow to discover that I need to rewrite everything because we don't know where this is going. I mean, not Kustomize, but integration in kubectl.
Right. So today it's kubectl and Kustomize. That's the only way to stay sane. Yeah.
Yes. No, don't use -k in kubectl. No, don't.
Thomas was late. He was at work. Just watch us at work. Oh wait, YouTube may be blocked, which always can be a true thing. That's something I really hadn't thought about after talking with some other people. It's like, oh yeah, a lot of enterprises block YouTube, so that's why we don't do XYZ. I went, oh, okay, that makes sense.
So that's a curious thing. I just thought of that. I'm curious how many people now that significant percentage is working from home.
Mm-hmm.
How many of that people are having now being forced to use VPNs and all that? Probably a significant
vast majority.
Right?
I would have to say 80, 90%, if not higher. I mean, anybody that was already remote or had remote standards, it was fine, but I can't imagine an enterprise allowing you to interact with stuff off the VPN. And in fact, it won't even be a split VPN. It's going to be a dedicated channel. So all the proxies, all the other rules are all in place.
I mean, I do not have anything against some kind of proxying VPN, whatever, for the communication between my laptop and the company infrastructure.
Sure. Yeah.
But I have a problem when it's set up in a way that actually blocks you or slows you down drastically, everything else, kind of.
Yeah.
I cannot Google, Stack Overflow is blocked.
Well,
That's a nightmare.
that's when you have the second computer that's sitting beside you to actually do your research. If anything else, that now, I mean, that's one thing that working from not the office, I'm not going to say working from home, but working from not the office gives you the ability, because you can have that second device, because in a lot of places you can't bring in a personal device other than maybe your phone, and even that sometimes is questionable. So now if you're working from home, you can have a second device. It's not on the VPN, it's on your network, to where you might actually be, that might be part of the reason why some people are being more productive, is they actually have two devices and they can actually do lookups instead of having to try to remember things.
Exactly. I mean, if you have a company computer, you're likely having your private one as well. But here's a business idea. We can make business, Darin. We need just funding. Let's create routers that have VPN baked in, so that the whole Wi-Fi in somebody's home is under VPN. No escape. Completely secure.
That exists already.
Really? I thought it's so ridiculous that nobody would think of it.
No, it's a real thing. Here, let's talk about, let's go through the chat here. So Thomas says, working from home, but in teleconferences most of the day. That's true. So the B side of that is, how do you actually get work done? Unless you're just a manager and that's your job, is to be in meetings. The VPN thing, agreed. That's why he joined here on iPad. That's the story, right? I didn't even think about an iPad or an Android device or something else to where, yeah, I'll just pop that up on a second screen. Perfect use case.
Exactly.
Let's see what Marco has.
Okay.
All the time on VPN and OTP tokens. Ugh. Yep. And then going back to, I do a split tunnel before VPN. I'm glad you're able to. I have run into some clients to where the device, it's basically like what Victor was just saying, but not at the router level, but at the device level. As soon as you power it on, it automatically tries to connect to the VPN. You can't short circuit it. I mean, obviously you could, because most of the time it's just Windows, so there's always ways. But I can't tell you the number of times I was teaching a class at a conference, and people would bring in their laptops knowing that it's going to be a hands-on thing, and they had to bring their laptops. It's like, well, our laptops connect back to the corporate VPN, so therefore we can't do any of these things. It's like, well, sorry that we told you that you needed to have something that wasn't locked down like that.
That's, if you ask me, that's pure incompetence or laziness. It's always easiest to make something that is easiest way to accomplish your objective, let's say make everybody secure, without taking into account everything else, kind of. The hard thing is, how can we make it secure and people be productive? Kind of, hey, do that for a change.
Yeah.
It's so easy to just, hey, VPN, kind of everything blocked.
I'm okay with that, but the B side to all, again, I don't know why I'm using B side today. I guess I've been listening to vinyl. There is no way in HE double hockey sticks that I would take a corporate laptop to a conference in a hotel or in a conference center. No way. Unless I had that laptop that the only way it connects is via VPN. And even then, that would be risky. Now, do I want to take my own laptop? No, I'd probably take a burner laptop or get a Chromebook. But then it's like, well, I don't want to carry two laptops. If I was the company, I wouldn't let you take the company laptop. That would be against protocol.
But here's a paradox then. security is important. We all agree on that. We
Yep.
might disagree on the level of security versus productivity and what's not. Now, and this, what I'm going to say is from that not being my area, so I might be talking something very silly. But if security is important, why do most companies choose the least secured operating system? Windows. Isn't that kind of a paradox?
It's because that's what everybody uses, and that was the best deal they got on negotiation. Well, the reason why they choose Windows is not because they chose Windows. They chose the hardware that only runs Windows. Or it could run Linux. It could run Linux.
Exactly, you corrected yourself. I understand
Could.
you don't want Macs because Macs are expensive. I understand that. And probably it's not only about device, it's probably software. Everything has to be more expensive on Mac. But hey, if the price is the problem, again, yeah, take Ubuntu or something. But it's,
Yep.
I think it's still, it goes back to what I said before. It's about incompetence or laziness, because really for the person who makes that decision and sets it up, who kind of Linux is more problematic. You need to figure out, the tools. You need to create the distribution. You need to do stuff like Windows. You just get it from the vendor, right?
Yeah.
Open.
But if you're a large company, let's call you super large enterprise, think airline manufacturer, something, right? Something that has tens of thousands of employees. It would be worth having your own group that cuts your own distribution of whatever that is. And then the software that you're running on there. I mean, if you're still using the Microsoft Office suite locally, like you're not using a cloud-based version of it, why? Right? Why do you need the heavy hardware anymore? If you're an application developer, it's a different story. Maybe. We've talked about that too. Look at Gitpod. You can run Gitpod on premise. You, in theory, could get by with the Chromebook.
There's a comment of Andre, actually, if you can bring it up. And I think that and please don't take this in offensive way, but I'm surprised that actually anybody needs Office Suite, assuming that we're talking about desktop, right? Isn't that browser-based now? No, I'm not using it much, so it might be that it sucks big time.
It's not as good as the desktop version, but it is very good. It's at least on par with what the Google suite is. The Office 365 online is as reasonable in general as the Google suite.
And it's no installation, no management, what's or not. It's online, and even if it's slightly worse, it potentially brings some advantages. Like the main reason why I use Google Docs where I work is because we can all edit the same document at the same time in separate times. Kind of, it's that collaboration that is enabled through using cloud-based, let's say, text editor in this case, right?
Yeah.
Not enough. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not following. I don't know.
Yeah,
Maybe.
Andre, can you give like a concrete example of the not enough? Because I haven't run into anything specific in either Word or Excel that caused me to say I can't get by with the online version. And there may be. It may be things that just don't work, and that's okay. There may be use cases to where it doesn't make sense. And in those cases, that's when you have the one-off laptop. But to have the Office suite installed on every machine and keep it patched, I mean, that's a whole team within itself, or multiple teams within themselves, versus just offering it as a web-based service for the vast majority of people. I would have to imagine.
Exactly.
I don't know. Again, that's not our day-to-day space.
Yeah. I
mean, it's hard enough for me. It's hard for me to stop using VS Code and start using Gitpod. Right? It's because VS Code's reasonable. It's heavy, but it's not IntelliJ heavy, right? So but to go to Gitpod, it's like, man, I can use it anywhere.
And it's kind of, I would say that Office suite type of tools have more incentive to be in cloud
Yeah.
because the level of collaboration tends to be higher. Usually, when we work on some code, eventually, most of the time we collaborate through Git, really, not directly through code. Now, there is a lot of things that can be done by live coding together. So there are definite advantages there. And then together we code, and then together we push, or something like that. That's amazing. But it's not as important as literally being able to, hey, my team, we are in a meeting, we open a document, in this case, Google Doc, we start kind of like putting their stuff, and then we finish the meeting, continue working on that document, and that document becomes something, right? It's almost like a Git for text.
Right. Yeah.
But now I'm curious, and this is my whole curiosity. I guess that probably now Word desktop or Office desktop probably can actually sync through cloud. That you work with the desktop application, but we're all working on the same one, right? Same doc.
I haven't seen it in real-time collaboration through the desktop app, and I may be wrong on that. I know you can save it to OneDrive, at least as a consumer level, but I haven't actually seen people use it as a full collaboration tool on the desktop. But, okay. Anything else?
No.
Anything else for the people still watching or listening and wondering why are we talking about Office suite tools? I want to get a Chromebook at some point. I really do. Just because it's... Here's Andre's comment. That's good. So I'm only using Linux and Office Online for my needs, but people who work with technical requirements and paper stuff claim they prefer Windows because it works for both scenarios.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Andre, if you're... Which version of Linux are you using on your desktop? I'm curious.
I hope it's not CentOS.
Which I hope not either. I had a friend. Well, he's still alive. I have a friend that's using. Oh, you're using Pop. Interesting. Have you heard of that one?
Is that the one that comes as kind of default option for what's that?
That's System 76.
Yeah, System 76. That
Here,
one.
hang on a second. So this is one of them. Yeah, that's cool. This is one that I've heard a lot about. I think because this is very interesting, doing media production, all this other stuff. Yeah, my friend, I can't remember the name of it. I'm drawing a blank. But it was, it looked and smelled like Windows 7 or Windows 7. I can't remember the name of that one, but he was really happy with it. He bought a refurbed Dell one of the XPSs, I don't remember which one it was, and got like 32, 64 gig of RAM in it. He paid like $1,500, which is going to smoke any Mac you can buy. Well, prior to the M1. M1 is a game changer. Based on what I'm saving my money up now for I don't think I'm going to get the M1. I would get a Mac Mini. I'm probably going to wait for the next class. But my son-in-law bought one for doing music production. It's absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. But yeah, okay, Pop OS. All right, that's another one put on the list. Yeah, but here's my problem with System 76, I think. Let me check here for a second. So if I was to get a 15, so it's i7 up to 64 gig, level up about this much. Okay, so design and buy here. Let's just do this. Because $1,100, that's not too bad.
Well, I understood that they're not really a choice because you want the cheapest laptop or something like that.
Yeah.
More very purpose. Basically, it's a alternative, mostly for professionals, developers who want Linux. Almost like Mac of Linux in a way, no?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and they still sell 17s. I miss my 17-inch MacBook Pro. That was great, especially after working on a 13 for years.
But you mentioned earlier, a few minutes ago, that you might want to buy Chromebook. That's one of the sore points to me. I really, really want Chromebook, but then I honestly don't understand what Google is doing, what they're developing, what they're killing. One day they're working on Wear OS, the next day they're not anymore. Same thing with Chromebooks, Chrome OS. Is that alive? Is that not alive? Google is a mystery to me. There is no company that has less clear anything than Google, except for Google search and advertising.
Right. And we know that Google is really good about killing products and whole lines. That would be my risk with going a Chromebook. But circling back to the beginning of today, if AWS was to come out, if Amazon was to come out with a laptop, an Amazon Basics laptop, running a Chrome OS-like operating system, think about in fact, I booted up my original Kindle 2 nights ago. It still works. The original Kindle. It still works, but they shut down the network because that was only a 3G connected thing. Well, obviously all the 3G networks are dead, so I can't even download anything to it except through the cable now. But their hardware, think through all the Kindle, the Fire. If they were to come out with a laptop, a Chromebook-ish laptop, that would be, other than, they would be selling one with ads and one without ads. My problem with it is they're going to be tracking the snot out of it.
Yeah, but at least, from Amazon and most others, you have kind of that feeling of we are dedicated to that. We're committed to this. It might fail, there is no guarantee that something will not fail and be killed. But with Google, there is almost guarantee that it will be killed. Like that, what's the name of their last Chromebook that they released? Was it Pixelbook or something like that called, right?
Yeah, sounds right, yeah.
By all reviews, I don't own one, but I have friends who have it. I also watched some reviews. It's amazing machine, it's a game changer machine. And then it stopped.
Yeah.
We never got an update. We never got a new version. Nothing. Created, killed. Yeah. And you can say, hey, some of the things got bad reviews and stuff like that, kill it. But everybody loves it. Except it being expensive, but that's a separate story, right? But everybody already bought it and loves it.
Yep. I think Andre sort of nailed it here. It's Ubuntu with better support for NVIDIA, so it's better for gaming. Well, if I played games, that would matter. Victor doesn't have time to play games. You play games, but you shouldn't be because you have 2 videos to do.
Yeah. I order food that I can eat without cutting with one hand, and then I can play while eating.
Okay. We're about at the top of the hour, so we probably should go ahead and wrap this up so you can go play video games. Or probably start work. I'm not sure which one. Huh?
I have an hour to eat and disconnect, and then back to work. So yes, I will be playing Phoenix Rising.
Phoenix Rising. On what?
Stadia.
On Stadia. And you still like Stadia?
I think it's absolutely brilliant. I don't understand the complaints. Now I have 500 to 600 both directions network. Stable 500 to 600 everywhere in the house. So I don't have problem with bandwidth.
Yeah.
Now I guess that many complaints must be because of bandwidth and stuff like that, but it's brilliant. I can play it on this monitor right now, right? On phone I can play it on big telly. Why buy hardware?
And with that, let's call it a day. Call it a weekend. Oh wait, we have to go to work now.
It's just starting. My
Yeah.
day, literally. So right now, from now, would be 5 o'clock,
Your
and I
local.
did
Yeah.
maybe 1 hour of work so far too.
Yeah.
So most of my day is still pending.
Okay. Let's let everybody go. So if your day is over, enjoy your weekend. We will be back probably at normal-ish time next week. I believe. I don't have anything hard going on next week. And we will talk to you then. Thanks for hanging out with us today, and we'll talk to you later.
Cheers.